Hey guys, welcome back to yet another tutorial. This is Alex 2K, and this tutorial is the last part of the tutorials that I was doing about caustics. On this one, we actually do talk about caustics. So, principle is simple. You can have. I'm gonna do a little simple thing here just to explain the foundation of it. Make myself a little polyplane. Where is my polygons? There we go. Make myself a little polyplane there and a little sphere there to explain what's going on here. So, if I make a render, this is default rendering there. Actually make a render the perspective. And whenever you have caustics, you have to adjust or you have to activate caustics not just on the light source itself, but also on the render settings. So, let's start by making a spotlight. Now, while I do this, let me tell you that as far as caustics go, you want to stay away from something like a directional light, for example, because the way that the caustics compute is based on the view of the actual light itself. So, in this case, with this spotlight, the caustics will be computed on that area. Let me just increase the resolution here just to make it more visible. So the caustics are going to be computed on whatever is illuminated there. Alright, so if this is like really far away, then there's a lot of caustics being computed that don't need to be computed, because if you're doing caustics for maybe just this, you want to keep the focus of this light on that object. You would change the cone angle and make it really, really small. Like that. So it's really focused on the object. And that would make the caustics compute faster. And then the question would be, well, yeah, but what if I want my whole scene to be lit up? Then, when you do caustics, you actually don't necessarily need to have the light itself emit diffuse and specular and shadows. You can have just one light that's a caustic light, and then you have another light which would do your direct lighting and specular lighting. Right? So in this case, I'll just show you what's going to happen here. If I make a render, actually, you know what? I'm going to make myself a little camera so that cause I keep tumbling around. Look through that camera here. Alright, so there we go. Let's lock this camera here. Okay, so show you what I'm talking about. We're going to start very simple by making a render of that camera 1. And this would be direct lighting. Now, if you want your light source to emit caustic photons, first thing you do is you open up the render settings. On the render settings, you make sure that you're rendering with mental ray, because mental ray likes caustics. And then you got, this is Maya 9, so you're going to go into the features, and on the features, I just love it. There we go. You'll find all these little values here. Global illumination, caustics, funnel gathering, and importance, and all that, which is new to Maya 9. I still need to read up on that. But you have caustics. So once you activate caustics, you can select your light source and open the attribute for it and go into the mental ray tab. On the mental ray tab, you will find a whole bunch of stuff there. And the second one says caustic and global illumination. Now, caustics are based on photons, so you got to tell it to emit photons. So in this case, this light is going to emit photons, and because I have the caustic photons on the render settings, or I have the caustics on the render settings, then these caustic photons are actually open. If that was unchecked, and I selected my light, then you'll see that I'm screwed there. There's no caustic photons. So you're just going to make sure you activate caustics, select your light, and you'll have the caustic photons on. Now, you can also have it cast global illumination. My suggestion is to try and have independent lights for independent values. So you have like a low illumination light, you'll have a caustic light, you'll have a, actually what am I talking about? You'll have a caustic light with global illumination, and you'll have another light which is only going to emit direct lighting. So now that we have caustics on, you were telling this to emit photons, and we have caustic photons. We are going to allow for the photons to do something. You know, we have Lamberts here, and Lamberts are not specular or transparent in any sort. So I'm just going to make myself another Lambert here and assign it to the sphere. I'm going to start with the simplest type of caustics, which is refractive caustics. I don't know if that's the simplest, but I'm just going to tell this transparency. There we go. And we're going to make a render, and you're going to see a little bit there. So you can see some of the caustic effect that's happening. Now, as I said, this has nothing to do with direct lighting. Okay? I can actually tell this light not to emit diffuse and not to emit specular. It's only caustic. So the only thing that we're going to see on this light is the effect of the caustics happening right there. I don't know if it's too dim, but hopefully you can see it. Now, why is it so dim? Well, if you open up the attribute for the light, you'll see under the caustics you have photon intensity, exponent, and caustic photons. The caustic photons, which right now are set to 10,000 by default, those dictate the quality of this caustic effect. The photon intensity dictates the intensity of the actual caustic. So if you increase this intensity to, let's say, 80,000, that's probably a little bit too much, but it's probably going to be really noticeable there. There we go. So now you can really see the caustic effect. This is the refractive caustics. Alright, so you can see that, and by the way, as you can see, the material, although it's transparent, doesn't have any refractions. So that, again, that has nothing really to do, I think. Give it refractions. Actually, it might, yeah. If I give it a refractive index, yeah, it does. So now we can see how the effect of light is being focused. And if that's off, then it's just basing it on the curvature. So yeah, the refractions do apply. Sorry about that. Anyway, so now that we have some caustics there, the caustic photons, the photon intensity is the intensity. The exponent is a multiplier. So if I make that value higher, so sort of like a divider rather than a multiplier. If I make it higher, then I'm going to have less intensity. See, now I see nothing. And if I make it less, then I'm going to have a lot. See what's happening? And then you have, I'm going to keep it at 2. And then you have the caustic photons themselves. I'm going to keep it at 1.5 so that I get more. I don't know with a sphere if we'll actually see anything. Caustic photons determine the quality of that. Now, because this is a sphere, that's pretty much the quality that we're going to get. But let's increase that to 90,000 and see if we get any difference aside render time. Not really, not much. Back to 10,000. Make a render, keep it, and let's compare. See, a lot and a little, a lot and a little, a lot and a little, a lot and a little. Let's make this big. That's a lot, and that's a little. So you can see how the quality increases. That's more noticeable when you have, more complex geometry. Like I said, this does compute refractions. So, for example, if this sphere had a bump map, I'm just gonna make a cloth there as a bump map, since it has some sort of detail to it. You can see how the caustics are now changing on there, and if you increase the quality from 10,000 to like 100,000, 100 times will go up, of course, but you'll get more detail on the caustics, and the higher that number is, the more detail you'll have, and the longer your render time will be. So I just took it to 900,000, and you can see exponentially a lot slower and a lot slower. There we go. But more quality. Alright, it actually looks like a happy face. Alright, so in short, just to introduce, like I said, you have a light source, and the light source does not need to emit any diffuse or specular lighting. It just needs to have its photons there to emit the photons, and then you can have another light source, which I'm going to just put right there so that it makes sense with the direction. And I'm just going to change the cone angle to 20, let's say 10, and give it a number of 10, and make a render. So my one light is casting photons, and my second light is only taking care of the direct illumination of the scene. Alright, so keep that in mind. Okay, so the principle is not really that complex. You just pretty much tell your light source to emit photons and have caustic photons, and that's the values that you change. Alright, so I hope that makes sense. I'm going to stop this tutorial right here, and I'm going to open up another tutorial where it's a more, not necessarily a more complex application of this, but the effect on the exercises that we're doing. Alright, so